Get started. Let's kick it off, Nathan. Let's have a
Great.
good day chatting about AI. I'll just share my screen again. Cool. So today we're going to be covering future of AI and logistics. Big meaty topic. There we go. But we're really excited to get this conversation going and to hear from some of the attendees on what their main questions are, and then share with you guys as much as we can some best practice, practical case studies, all about making AI extremely tangible and useful. What we're going to do over the next, about 45 minutes and is take a look firstly at some just high level key trends in AI. So what are the kind of main categories that people are already adopting AI in logistics? Then we're going to be diving into just two case studies for adopting AI specifically for improving customer experience, as that's one of the key trends in AI overall. And then we're going to have a demo. I'm actually going to walk you guys through exactly how I gather those insights on key trends in AI, specifically looking at what companies have already adopted AI. And we're going to use ChatGPT to do that. So you'll get some practical hands-on experience and of using GPT. So the goal of the next like about 40 minutes or so is to make AI really tangible and accessible. My goal is for every participant here today to be able to take away at least two concrete examples of how AI is being used in logistics. And you should be able to go back to your desk and replicate the same analysis within 10 minutes. There are a couple of things I'm really excited to get into the session today, especially with Nathan, who we have as our guest participant. So we'll start at the top. I think, Nathan, let's start by would mind just introducing yourself to the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Charlotte, and pleasure to meet everyone virtually today. My name's Nathan, and I'm the chief exec at Resolvable.com, and we basically focus on a full stack resolution service where we deploy technology at the start of a customer service journey from the initial inquiry, hitting a bot or an autonomous agent, actually passing that to a human if we need to. That human can be within our client's business or within our own business. And then we do a post analysis of, did that human actually resolve the query that got passed? So we have a quality assurance process, but throughout that customer journey, we use AI to ensure that the resolution is as accurate as we possibly can. So we've been working in with logistics and retailers for a long time now. So really excited to kind of get into the details today and also hopefully a discussion with you all later on.
Yeah, I love that. What I love about your product too, Nathan, is you guys are solving that whole stack, right? Not only the tech, but the entire solution. So working with companies who actually just don't know where to get started with managing their support teams and how to make AI, how to make agents more efficient with AI, right?
Yeah,
The kind of human AI partnership.
exactly.
You guys do super well. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Charlotte. I'm the founder at Captur AI. So we're hosting this webinar today. And what Captur does, so we work with supply chains, different types of logistic partners to help ensure that they maintain quality as they scale. So how can you grow your business with actually reducing defects at the same time? We do that by helping teams adopt specifically computer vision, so image-based AI, into workflows like delivery, drivers scanning a package at a doorstep or customers scanning an item before returning. And based on that image, we then kind of triage and route to the ops teams and give them the info they need to know.
Yeah.
So we're kind of both working and very much applied directly applications of AI in logistics, but to different areas, basically kind of
And
post claim, pre claim, right?
yeah, and also I'd love to add to that, Charlotte, because anyone that works in logistics knows how frustrating it is to achieve a very high successful delivery rate as a carrier, but then the very small percentage of parcels that get delivered incorrectly, quite often it's pretty much makes up the majority of the negative sentiment that's online for these carriers, whether that's an online review or just the general sentiment of how that carrier performs, but it's not reflective of operational performance. And one of the key things to unlock there is exactly what you guys are looking at, which is that proof of delivery part of the exercise. How is that actually quality control, just like if it was a manufacturing process and a good piece of item was going through a conveyor belt. Like, how do we make sure that element of the delivery journey, proof of delivery, is perfect, high quality? Problem people, it's a human process. Problem people are identified and problem processes are identified. But I think it's probably for not many people, but for people that like logistics, it's such an exciting topic because it really is a disproportional lever that we can pull that actually increases customer experience, and probably gets us closer to a true reflection of actually still getting those high delivery rates, but feeling the pressure of the failures, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Like oftentimes the failure points are ones that people latch onto, and you see on Trustpilot reviews, you see in Twitter, right? But as you said, that's not necessarily reflective of the whole operations they're running. So just gaining that data and visibility to that
Yeah.
often is, yeah, what we see helps, teams who currently have no visibility or they're doing some manual auditing today. But we know these systems are complex to deploy in the operation. So I think today I'm excited to hear kind of what stage the audience are at adopting AI, and then give everyone some super, as you said, tangible learnings. So let's start with just the high level picture, talk about key trends in AI as applied to logistics. So this is an overall view of what we're seeing. Now, the methodology behind data behind these trends is basically threefold. So what we did is we took the most recent Q2 earnings releases across about 20 different both carriers, retailers, and delivery companies across the stack. Those are publicly available on their websites. And then we use a GPT-assisted analysis. So we uploaded those reports, and then we use prompts to ask GPT to help us kind of find key summaries and findings. I'm going to share at the end of the third section where we go into the actual demo of using GPT. I'm going to share a lot more data on the summaries and key findings. But at a high level, there are kind of four themes that are generally known in the industry of places where we're applying AI, or where computer vision or AI assistance is being applied today. So first one, enhancing warehouse automation. I feel like this is the area that's probably the most well known and the most mature in terms of adoption, you'd say, Nathan. So here we've got obviously different applications of AI-driven robotics, some very interesting recent things about safety and security in the warehouse setting. So how can you monitor what's going on? And but I think this one is pretty much the later stages of awareness, adoption. Most people are doing a version of this, would you say?
Yeah, I think obviously it's been around for quite some years now as a topic, and it's probably come more into the limelight recently, just because of over the last 24 months how GPT and other popular products have put this more in the general sphere of conversation. But anyone that's worked in a warehouse setting will know conversations about automation and using AI within that automation setting it's been around for quite some time. But it's exciting to see that the investments increase in that area, and also the quality of the output of what can be achieved is increasing as well, for sure.
Yeah, so companies doing kind of robotics, pairing physical hardware with AI software is definitely getting a lot of investment in the space. So I think we'll just continue to see this evolve. Now, one of the examples pulled from a report was GXO Logistics, specifically implementing AI in their warehouses to scale automation. Now they are not alone. We'd expect kind of most of the major players, or all the major players in the space, to have a version of this. I think what's interesting is to see how, especially if you talk about on-demand delivery, last mile delivery, with warehouses, hubs getting smaller in cities, how they're going to apply the same sort of robotics in situations that might be a little harder to control. Yeah, suddenly you've got people doing the picking, for example, in smaller sites, how AI can be adopted there. The second key trend is also one that is quite mature in terms of its adoption and awareness. So obviously optimizing delivery routes. So we've got lots of existing algorithms, right? This has been around for decades in terms of logistics. How can we reduce delivery time? How can we reduce stop time? How can we also improve the overall kind of sustainability of delivery? So this is a massive area of topic. It would definitely have its own webinar, but there are obviously a lot of interesting players in that space. Some of the more recent projects that I've seen personally, people working on is how can you get a bit more accurate with GPS? Using GPS as a stopgap to see kind of our drivers in the right place, our items being delivered to the right location. And there are obviously some limitations with GPS. It can't be that accurate, especially in certain scenarios. But that's a bit of what we're seeing. Amazon being what we see is that one of the market leaders here. They've obviously been using this routing optimization for a long time and are doing it especially at high peak. But again, this one is mature. We'd expect every company to have their own solution that they're really driving forward in terms of route optimization. The third key theme is driving sustainability through AI. So let's say, how can we cut emissions? How can we partner with the right carriers, partners? How can we adopt a mix of the kind of heavier vehicles plus the lighter weight shared mobility vehicles? And there's a bunch of interesting hardware that's come out. I just saw a recent vehicle from UPS. I think they just launched their new look, kind of new age vehicle last week of what the new e-cargo and delivery vehicles are going to look like. And so that's a space where there is a ton of adoption. It's primarily been on the hardware side. As we've seen, there might be some interesting companies and startups coming out, though, related to ESG reporting. How can you actually capture all the data companies need to be able to report on their sustainability metrics? So that's an area where I think there's definitely growth and is a bit more earlier on in the adoption curve. So examples, for example, from DHL on how they're leveraging AI to minimize carbon footprint. And we see a lot of optimization, not just at the last mile, but specifically across the whole freight and supply chain.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think on that as well, Charlotte, like because the consumers, which ultimately a lot of the logistics companies serve as a by proxy to their clients, being the retailers, but consumers are more aware of sustainability, and we're seeing also because they can reduce that and use AI to help further that mission. I think things like the checkout process and delivery options at checkout are being kind of a little bit more transparent with the impact of some of those different services. And if that continues to be competitive, then hopefully those carriers are going to push the adoption of AI to better their proposition from a sustainability perspective, which will then translate obviously to potentially getting a consumer choosing their service over an alternative service at checkout. So it's definitely an interesting space because it's the consumers probably don't wonder so much and care so much about the automation that goes off in the warehouse as much as they do the sustainability on the front end.
Yeah, so actually that's a great point. So the first two trends we're seeing, kind of warehouse automation and then talking about route optimization, really big cost cutting drivers, in the businesses. And then when you start to look at things like improving sustainability and then improving customer experience, which is the next big topic, really talking about revenue drivers.
Yeah.
There to the business. Yeah, absolutely. Improving customer experience with AI. This is a topic that we actually saw some of the most new updates and kind of coverage, especially in the recent quarterly earnings reports from these companies. Everyone right now is looking at ways that they can drive improved customer experience, not only improved customer experience, but also a very kind of stable, reliable customer experience, right? Every customer wants to think, I know when I order with X retailer, I know when I order with X delivery company, I'm going to get my delivered. Now, obviously, a lot of the innovation, the industry the last 10 years has been around the part of that equation that is, I get what I ordered in a certain time frame, right? So as you mentioned, kind of, picking delivery slots, windows, and working to reduce the time to door. But what happens if something goes wrong, right? We know this is the real world, this is logistics, this is complex, things are going to go wrong. But how can companies best really triage that in the moment. And I think actually for customers, it goes a longer way sometimes to having a really great experience, even if there's a problem, versus having, perfect delivery, which is obviously what we're going towards, but perfection is not attainable when we're talking about real world settings, right? It's mainly about what's the mitigation strategy? How do you handle customers and make them feel, as they should, that they're part of this very personalized journey. Brilliant. So I'm going to pause there for a second because we're going to move into the second section now, which is moving into the case studies and then some of the very tangible examples. Before I do that, I just want to pull up a new poll. So the first poll that we asked you guys was, where are you at today? So are people kind of just learning about AI? Are they researching, planning projects? Are they prototyping? Or are they actually deploying AI in production? And pretty interesting. So we've got some people just learning, and then we've actually got quite a few people deploying AI in production right now. So we're going to end that poll and share results with everyone. And then we're going to start a new poll. So basically ask you guys, what are the topics that you're most interested in when it comes to AI? What would you like to learn more about? So let me start that poll right now. Okay.
I've just seen an open question come in as well, which I think you'll be addressing, Charlotte, on a few slides' time. So,
oh, brilliant. Okay. Let's see. Let's launch this new poll.
it does seem like we've got a good mixture of people that have progressing the adoption throughout their business, but also just exploring the initial and learning what it can mean. And actually, it's a very interesting piece of research was done in 2023 by Gartner, who said that the inflated expectations of what AI is going to do is peaking. So, we're at a point where people are getting a little bit of oh, I need to learn, I need to adopt this, I need to, do something with it in my business, but not quite sure what it means. And that in that curve of inflated expectations is going to, come down. And there's to practically implement some of this stuff, it does take lots of teams, investments, coordination across the business. And there's plenty of businesses that are going to adopt it over a longer period of time than everyone says. Next year we'll all be on a beach somewhere and everything will be all the AI will be doing our jobs, but that's probably a very inaccurate timeline. No one knows the true timeline, but I think it's important to acknowledge that there's some pressure almost amongst the people that are having the conversations. From the companies we talk to, everyone's at different stages. It's not like everyone's very far adopted. And if you're not doing that, you're very far behind. It's quite a good mixture, really. Some great adoptions, but it's definitely nothing to panic about. You're still early. If you're thinking about it now, you're early in the process.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we want to now's the perfect time, right? Thinking about it, everyone's thinking about their even 2025 strategies, right? Where's AI going to stack up? So it's the perfect moment to be looking at all the options of where the best places to apply AI and then learning from people who are already doing it. So yeah, let's talk about case studies. And then I know we've got two questions in the chat. So I will jump in and we'll answer those questions as well. But in terms of giving us a tangible example, Nathan, love to hear from your experience, right, on how you are seeing companies in this logistics space specifically using AI to resolve claims resolution.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. The visual that's on screen just basically represents, I suppose, a typical journey of when an issue arises, which creates an item of work within the business. Whether that's a claim for a lost parcel, whether when it's to do with logistics or whether it's some other issue. But the kind of primary point in which that happens we need as much data as we can around that. So there's almost a prerequisite to being able to use AI to solve these kind of things, which is things like knowledge bases, process documents, ideally some sort of customer relationship management system where you've got, for example, Salesforce with customer records and details about what went off with that delivery. And so there's a point in which you almost have to look at, okay, what information do we have available that we could serve or use to actually then maybe automate a resolution. So there's definitely a kind of an initial prerequisite piece of research that a lot of companies will do to try and figure out, okay, where are we lacking? Because if you can't put data in, you can't get data out. So I think that's an important kind of point to recognize. And then when it comes to actually like resolving those kind of issues, everyone's going to be quite familiar with the use of like conversational AI. I think most people have interacted with some sort of kind of like bot that's on a website, quite often a chat function, sometimes voice AIs now becoming more popular, but still not very common. But the role of an autonomous agent pretty much has to have that prerequisite information. And where that sits differs by client. But how we try and think about it is that if the information is in one system, that's the ideal situation. So you'll see customers using some sort of like, it could be an Oracle, a NetSuite, a Salesforce. There's various ways to kind of configure that kind of central brain, so to speak. But then the AI needs an access to that to be able to diagnose those issues. Also, we find it's really good to incorporate previous resolutions into that autonomous agent's knowledge.
Mm.
So we look back over, tens of thousands of conversations that have happened previously around the same issue. What was advised, which ones were successful. So there's a lot of enrichment that you can do at that point to try and get the autonomous agent more accurate. But the difference in general, between like an autonomous agent and something like it's more like a chatbot is probably simplified by saying that a chatbot uses a little bit more basic functions of if the situation happens, advise this, and it's a little bit more pre-programmed as opposed to an autonomous agent, which might use some generative AI. Obviously, definitely will use some conversational AI, but the idea of getting that, and we've all had probably frustrating experiences with some sort of chatbot on a website somewhere, and that's largely down to the implementation of that function and how much information it has access to. So that's a really key thing that we try and discover with a lot of our clients, but also we see it in great implementations. It's taken a while. It's taken a while to get all of that information linked up, and at that point in the process, deflect, hopefully resolve that issue that came in. But I think importantly, and we're seeing this actually with a few metrics like first contact resolutions going down, because by the time an autonomous agent or a chatbot or some sort of automated function can't solve a claim or an issue in general, it then goes to a human to obviously resolve. So we're seeing humans being stuck with the more complex queries where they might be missing data. It might be that there was no proof of delivery scan, or something went wrong with the tracking that is unusual and doesn't follow a known pattern. So we're seeing kind of the point in which it reaches a human become more complex. First contact resolutions going down, and it becomes then important to ensure that you have really good quality people when a human is involved. And that's kind of what I suppose, Charlotte, you were saying earlier about the symbiotic nature of like using AI and humans together. And there's a theme that we're seeing, which is businesses today that have, let's just make the number simple, 100-person team in the, let's say, customer support function, resolving some of these claims issues, etc. That team probably won't grow in proportion with the future growth of the business's revenue, parcel volume, etc., because of the implementation of some of these technologies. we've got clients today that have the exact same size of team this Q4 going into this Black Friday peak period than they did last year, but they've got a 30% uplift in parcel volume in the network. So there's already, we're seeing sometimes 30% reductions in the resource requirement, and that's probably just going to continue to grow. But it
Mm.
also has a interesting effect on the actual workforce. It kind of puts pressure on them to perform well, and also maybe some general existential crisis around what's going to happen over the years to come. Like, how do I remain useful to the business? And I think that it pushes back to that point of a quality individual who cares about the resolutions for the customer, knows the processes really well. It's become a little bit harder to not be effective as a customer service agent. So the expectations and requirements of what it means to be someone that resolves a claim or provides a customer support function is increasing. And also it feels that, we will continue to see that kind of percentage of how many people are required to resolve how many queries significantly go up over the next few years. So there will be less people, but hopefully, if it stays in line with the growth of the relevant business, there won't be mass, reductions in the size of the teams. But that's
Mm.
very much down to the individual business and what they do. And the final
Definitely.
thing that I would touch on this point is, because it creates a requirement to achieve a resolution in scenarios which quite often are more complex by the nature of the fact that they've actually had to go to a person. It also means that the conversations that happen at that point, it's ideal to use AI to analyze those, which is one of the things that we do, because we felt that by the time it gets to a human, there's a lot of things that we would expect it to do conversationally that mean that the resolution is handled really well in a situation where it requires empathy and a lot of other kind of human, handling of that. It's essentially a complaint. Hope by the time it reaches a human, and using AI to analyze those conversations at scale means that we can ensure that that quality does in fact happen. So going back to, I suppose, a more general sense of what we're seeing in both logistics and retail, because it does apply to both, is that there's an adoption of, sorry, acknowledgement of the fact that there's data that sits in multiple systems that should come together to feed the knowledge of some sort of autonomous agent or chatbot function. And then there's also acknowledgement that the queries that the team are handling are getting more difficult. Therefore,
Mm.
the responses and the resolutions are being measured more accurately. We used to see like 9 out of 10 kind of mid-sized businesses using spreadsheets or Google Docs or Google workflows to kind of randomly pick conversations and measure the quality of them. And now we're seeing much bigger adoptions of quality assurance software. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of, I suppose, underlying objectives within that all kind of relate back to, if you don't have the right data in the right places, you're still going to be heavily reliant on humans, and that's, I suppose, a general theme across the whole, use cases of how AI impacts an operation. But
Mm. You have to have that baseline of
yeah,
strong data. Like you definitely. I'm really curious. So you talked about specialization of the support teams themselves, but also that one person is probably going to be able to do many more individual tasks, so increase the capacity. What about and we've got a question about how small companies how can they identify the right areas to implement AI for the highest ROI? So not just small companies, but large companies, like how should they think about the lift between what was, implement this chatbot, it'll be the first line of defense, towards implement this AI agent?
yeah,
Right? Is the integration getting easier? Is it about the same?
yeah. It's a
Any
great question,
differences?
and it's a great question, and I'm not sure everyone can actually see the question. So just to read the specific question out.
Mm.
So how can small companies identify the right areas to implement AI for the highest return on investment. So I think that the great thing, and Charlotte, you're right, the ease of doing this is increasing because even if you take one of the big five kind of customer comms platforms like Zendesk, for example, they have a set of kind of inbuilt services that will allow you to kind of make good progress towards solving some of these issues. So using your knowledge base, your historical conversations, a bunch of other things within your own existing Zendesk setup to try and pave a way of automating some of these resolutions. So I definitely think that the first place for any small, medium sized business, which is, we work with a lot of those kind of businesses, is to turn to your customer messaging solution. When we talk obviously specifically about this kind of use case in front of us, that they'll often be a great place to start. And also, it's always great to speak to kind of local firms that deal with like consultancy, transformation, things like that. Just even to have an open initial conversation, not necessarily start a project with them, but it's I think fact finding and those low hanging fruit just seem to be a great place to start if you don't know where to aim.
Definitely. So it's even just start with your existing stack, see which of your tools have an AI option now, just to get, especially if you're a small company, just to get your feet wet a bit. And I think so. Rebecca has a question for you, Nathan, which is what percent of your client support cases get passed from AI to humans because the company doesn't trust the model enough to give it access to more sensitive data sets or be able to call functions that touch money, i.e., issuing refunds, placing orders. So I guess the curious, so this is a really interesting question. Thanks for asking it, because this is about the anxiety around, well, how good is this AI going to be? And what sort of infrastructure do we need to make sure? So Rebecca's basically asking what percent of cases are resolved first time by an agent versus escalated to having a manual check today? And where do you see that going
Yeah,
in
no,
the next year?
yeah, it's a great question, and there is definitely a difference between retail businesses and logistics businesses. We see a lot more aggressive, like automation in the logistics side than the retail side, mainly because the retailer sees their brand as part of their proposition. So we've got a couple of high-end retailers that we work with that have tried automating things, then turned things off, and then revisited it, and they're much more conscious about the kind of things that are advised that AI can do, as opposed to as I said, logistics companies are a little bit more aggressive on that front. So in general, though, in terms of deflection, it does massively depend on the business's kind of like query split. But like if you take a typical split of like largely it being like where is my order queries, returns queries, initial kind of like product inquiries, etc. A lot of those, bar like things like refunds or more complex queries, can have some level of automation or self-diagnostic by the customer. So you can get as high as 60-70% of them having some level of automation touching them. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're fully resolved and don't then have a human involved in that process somewhere. But it kind of you're exactly right to look at it from the perspective of take the lowest hanging fruit and the biggest query type. So like, Wizmos is a great one, and people have been trying to reduce Wizmo queries. When I say Wizmo, where is my order? For a while now, and on things like hosted tracking pages through platforms like Aftership is an example of one of the things that people do to retailers specifically to consolidate multiple carriers tracking into one place to try and give the consumer somewhere to go for that. So yeah, the answer really does depend specifically on the customer, but I would look at it from a query type perspective. That's the first thing that we would always advise the business to do. Look at the split of query types across your business. Look at the things that are required to resolve those query types, and how much of that could be feasibly automated easily. And also, if you're a retailer, I think that brand just plays more of a part of the proposition, and it becomes also how much do we erode by not having a human involved in more contact. So there's definitely some
Mm,
artificial, I suppose, massaging of those numbers to make sense for the individual client.
yeah, definitely. That's a great perspective. So your suggestion is you actually want to track the workflow or how much the agent can be autonomous versus passed to a human based on the type of claim, and focus on what's driving your highest volume of claims today. But then in cases you've seen 60 to 70% of claims can have some layer of AI automation off
Yeah,
of that, which is pretty fantastic.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, exactly. And obviously it massively, like I said, differs by business, but I think it's always a great place to start to, reflect inwards at your own business, look at your query types, look at your technology stack, um, and talk to people that have done it before. It's just general networking, sharing knowledge. Like a lot of this stuff, it's copying. It's it's copying what other people have done, and being really curious and efficient about and resourceful, I guess, and how you look at some of these things. Going back to that point of if you're a kind of a smaller business, that is.
Brilliant. Okay, love that. And we've gotten a couple more questions, which actually lead into the next segue. So that's AI using that's AI resolving claims. So Wizmo claim comes in. How do you most efficiently and effectively address that and resolve it quickly? You're seeing this move from chatbots to agents being the more effective method. It's getting easier to deploy into your operations, and those agents can start off the back, especially if you've given in historical data about resolving claims, they can reach that kind of 60, 70% accuracy today, and I'm sure that'll only go up. But it's important to look at that AI's effectiveness by claim type, kind of
Yeah.
summarize it. I think were great points. And we got a couple questions as well on how AI can improve fraud detection and also play a role in reducing the number of failed deliveries. Um, So here's one question. What role does AI play in reducing the number of failed deliveries? Which is a great point, because that is our next case study. So using AI to prevent DNR claims and failed deliveries. So lots of ways to approach this. I'll give you a quick snippet about our approach at Captur and also how we're seeing teams use Captur alongside other tools. So one of the best ways to reduce claims is actually just to stop them from happening in the first place. All right, when we look at DNR claims, we see on average 50% of the proof of delivery photos are unusable. Right, they're not of a package, they're not of a doorway. When a claim happens, not able to easily resolve because there's just no good evidence there. Now that number is slightly askews from 30 to 50%, actually, interestingly, depending on your type of workforce. If you're using a highly seasonal, high turnover contract workforce versus employed workforce where there's more stability in the routes. Now, the approach we take is at the doorstep when a driver arrives, the AI can actually assist them in real time to basically verify that not only are they in the right place, but also that the evidence that they're taking is high quality enough that if a claim happens, you're able to resolve it quickly. So the photos feeding into, let's say, Nathan's system, of triaging those agents, they have the right signal because everything in this world, when we're talking about, okay, where was the actual order, where was the package, or what condition is something in, it's all about understanding what's going on in the scene. Do you have enough evidence to prove or to show what's going on in the scene? So a couple of other bits of information and data that teams use to feed in to proof of delivery that's not just the photo are things like the geolocation. So I've seen a high level adoption of companies using geolocation to basically make sure drivers are in the right area when they drop off, deliver. There are some big caveats to that in terms of geolocation not being very accurate in certain cases. And what we're talking about here at Captur, and this is just a little snippet of what we do, is instead of just taking a photo and then submitting it, we look at that photo we use AI assistants to actually guide the driver, the end user in real time, by checking the photo against, whatever the company's policy is for deliveries. And we can pull in those extra bits of metadata that the company is already gathering. So that being geolocation data, that being data about the driver history, that being data about the customer history. Basically, how can we treat the customer's address so there's doorstep like this thumbprint, right, that we can remember going forward and make sure that we're delivering to the safe place every time. When teams don't do this, some of the obvious pain points that they see, obviously DNR or WSMO claims, so where's my order or did not receive claims, two different words for the same thing. And those claims can be driven by a multitude of different factors. So those claims can be driven by driver fraud. They can be driven by customer fraud. They can be driven by just driver going to the wrong address, right? Or an input issue with the address. Be interested to see, especially in the US, there have been lots of changes on kind of data privacy and regulations too. Are we going to start to see more claims from customers saying, hey, I can see you captured a photo of me, with my face in it, and I want you to delete that. So there are lots of new types of claims that companies might see as they start to grow. But AI can be used at the point of delivery to assist the drivers and ensure that they are at the right address in the safe place for the customer. And like we said, this is really driven by a combination of what's called edge compute. So being able to do that sort of detection on the phone instead of in the cloud, the server, makes it a lot faster. And therefore, this technology is for the first time being able to be adopted by a logistics space where time is of the essence. Right. So when we start with teams, we see up to 50% of approved delivery photos are non-compliant. And then we see adopting this technology can have up to an 82% improvement in first-time compliant, first-time success deliveries by simply adding in this little assistant layer. Brilliant. I know I'm gonna speed on because we have 15 minutes left, but there are a couple other interesting questions here. So we've got two questions, one from Raphael, one from James, both talking about like identifying root cause of problems. So before we get into those, I really want, especially Nathan, your feedback on answering James's question. What role is AI playing in reducing and root causing problems? Are you reducing the quantity of contacts as opposed to, say, improving the experience or cost of the call to the business? So James, I think quickly let me just answer this live so everyone can see it. The technology that Nathan and I are talking about is obviously talking about at the point of a claim being made or at the point of delivery. But what you can imagine is as software like this are capturing all of that data, one of the most important outputs is actually this trends analysis of what types of claims are happening and what is causing that. So for example, some of the data that we capture with teams is about where is the highest chance of kind of missing orders, or where the most non-compliant, the highest risks locations or addresses or even drivers, and feeding back that insight to operation teams so that they can best take action, right? So I think it's a really good question. It's like AI can not only be used in the moment in the experience, but actually can be used for planning and driving that experience. So when you're working with partners, you want to make sure that they're actually giving you back as a business the data that you need in terms of seeing trends, seeing insights, right? So you can drive higher level decision making. It's not about each individual interaction only, right? It's about the trends that you're seeing. So, yeah, do you have anything to add to that, Nathan?
Yeah, I was going to just add and say that, like, obviously reducing those queries, I suppose, before they happen, like, there's two ways that I suppose some companies think about that. One is reducing the query from ever happening so that the issue doesn't occur. And then there's also the reduction of it becoming something that a human has to touch, which creates a cost as well as a customer issue. So like I think obviously previous a few slides ago when I was talking a lot about if the issue does happen as a kind of prerequisite to all the explanations that I gave. But in terms of reducing the career from even happening in the first place, obviously very very largely differs by the type of business, but in logistics, that could be, identifying a poor proof of delivery photo and emailing the customer to say that's been identified, and they've started an investigation, will be in touch within X amount of time. So there's kind of some proactive measures that could be made, which, I'd argue is preventative of the issue. But in terms of stopping those things happening full stop, then that's where you can look at, using technology like what you talked about, Charlotte, to find the problem processes or the problem of functions. So it might be an individual is a recurring problem with their poor proof of delivery photos. It might be that part of the process is a poor process that is constantly creating these issues, which then obviously we can use to reduce that. And similar to what you said, obviously using the data to try and find those insights, and that can be manyfold, especially when you talk about e-commerce and retail. You can combine marketing data, product data, sales data, trading data, etc., to try and kind of like reduce some of that. But yeah, in its simplest term, I think it's always nice to start with the root cause of the issues that we see that occur, and working back, from there, what up the tree of that even happening is causing this.
Absolutely. It's about having the analytics to back up the actions, basically. Brilliant. And they're moving into kind of the last section where we're talking about let's really apply this AI and see it in the wilds. A couple things to clarify, right? We've been using a lot of phrases, and if people are just learning about AI, it's kind of tricky to keep up with, right? We'd only just learned about chatbots, and now we've got agents, we've got assistants and everything. What do they mean? So I think 3 emerging tech areas to be on everyone's radar that you should know what these terms mean and be bringing these back to your business and use them to basically evaluate opportunities. One is one we mentioned, which is edge. So what does this mean? This means like faster real-time data, being able to do certain computing functions or apply AI on edge makes processes happen faster and compute happen on the edge. So this applies to routing. This applies to the use case I just showed about validating the proof delivery images. But infrastructure for edge will be a hot topic on CTOs' radars over the next 5 years, and how you use this data. AI agents and AI assistants, right? We've used both terms. So I want to help clarify what is the difference, give people a bit of a cheat sheet for AI assistants versus agents. We can share this afterwards if helpful for everyone. While we do this, I'm also just going to put another poll up, which is what you feel like the biggest blocker to adoption for AI in your businesses, because really curious to hear and where people think the blockers are or where you're struggling. But the question of agents versus assistants, and I really love this one because in the past year, right, ChatGPT, there's so many new terminologies, it's hard to keep track. So what do these things mean? So assistive AI, so assistants versus agentic AI or agents. So agents' goal is to perform tasks on the behalf of the user. So you are another arm, right? Another agent for the company. You should be able to autonomously execute those tasks, so work independently with very minimal intervention and oversight. And that frees up agents to focus on more complex issues. I think this is exactly what Nathan was talking about, your use case, what you do at Resolvable, right? As you said, even if you've got 100 people today, you should probably have 100 people in a year's time. And how you do that is you free up those agents to focus on more complex tasks, and you use AI agents to come in and do some of the initial triaging. So I think that's a great example. Now that agent needs to obviously learn from past resolutions of past data, but they should be expected to work autonomously. Assistive AI. So what are AI assistants? So they help users complete tasks. So think of it more like a co-pilot, providing information and suggestions. The human agent remains more in control. In this case, there's more of that feedback loop. And the benefit is really for enhancing performance. So if we talk about, helping drivers get to the right place, helping customers upload a warranty claim, helping a user do something better, there we're talking more about AI assistance. Now, an example usage, a great usage is also providing this sort of real-time info and really like summarizing data, providing recommended responses. Raphael has a question, which I'll just put into the live chat, which was, are there examples of people using AI to help detect, triage, and accelerate defect reduction across an ecosystem of services and integrations? So I think, Raphael, what you're asking there is really, you said on the back end, if you're using a lot of different tools, can you use AI to, this is almost like the root cause question, right? Can you use AI to identify defects across different tools? That would be a great use case for an AI assistant, right? Can you basically ingest a bunch of different data that's going on and then output some prioritization, right? Hotspots or triaging. Now, I'll have to get back to you, Raphael, on if I can think of a tool. And I'd love to know more about what tools you're thinking of, or these kind of third parties in your tech stack, or these internal built APIs. But that sounds like a great application for AI assistant.
Yeah, and I suppose on the same question, that not that this solution is the only solution, but there's businesses that like Peak.ai, those guys do have a pretty full service of like tying the consultancy with the platform that those guys have, and looking at like what you said, Raphael, about data coming from different areas and kind of like maybe asking an AI questions about the data that you have to input, and then having a bit of a conversation with what that looks like, what's being identified, what are the findings from that. But because that's very specific to each business, it's definitely more of a kind of BI led approach in terms of solutions to be seeked out to solve that issue. It's kind of like the use of AI in a BI setting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, BI tooling, and that sounds like we can share some examples of companies that are focused on this type of conversational or data analysis, generative AI. Companies like, especially if you're an enterprise, companies like MindsDB come to mind as just, can I answer a general question? And the challenge is actually just getting to that data. But you can use quite a general assistant in order to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, sorry, Charlotte. I was just going to add that like a lot of the things that we've actually just talked about in the last kind of like 10 minutes, but actually throughout really, are key topics within the Digital Commerce Expo for anyone that is in London over the next 2 days. So Wednesday, Thursday this week, the Digital Commerce Expo's got a lot of kind of like technology-led things. So like looking at CIOs, and also it goes through to operations, customer experience, etc. But a lot of things we talked about in the last 10 minutes are, if you actually look at the Digital Commerce Expo, you'll see it's free to attend, but you'll see a lot of these topics kind of ironically, the questions that people are asking are coming up at the event, which is great to see. Really, it's a good conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. And we've got just 5 minutes left, which I can't believe because it feels like it's sped by. We're getting a lot of great feedback on blockers to AI adoption. So please add to that poll if you haven't already. This is the last section. This is the demo. It's going to be super quick because it is super quick. It's very easy to do. How can you get these insights yourself about what players are adopting AI in the market? Let me just scoot forward in case anyone needs to drop off on the example output. So the methodology here is basically downloading earnings reports across various different logistics companies. Again, these are available all publicly on websites, on investor reporting websites. throw them into ChatGPT and see what you can output. These are some of the example outputs that you can get by running this analysis at your desk in about 5 minutes. Who's talking about AI? So we uploaded about, I said, 15 reports. AI was mentioned, actually not as much as I was assuming it would be. It was only mentioned 10 times, and most of those times were by Amazon and Instacart in their earnings. Now, caveat, not you can't just look at the earnings PDFs. And actually, if you listen to the transcripts or you drop in transcript data into ChatGPT, you sometimes get more mention of AI because in the earnings calls, that's when the business leader is going to be talking more in depth about certain AI projects. But it wasn't mentioned as often as I thought. And then performance trends. So there are some companies in the market that in the earnings reported facing various degrees of financial pressure, pressure on revenue, margin, and other retailers in the industry showing slightly stronger trends to growth. And that's basically just seeing the shift in the market from a few of these on-demand challengers really growing. Other example outputs that you can get is comparing across companies. So for example, putting in earnings reports from 3 different companies, FedEx, Instacart, DoorDash, we can see that all 3 of them are using AI to improve customer experience. But the differences are FedEx's strategy is focused more on optimizing their logistics network and moving into different industries like healthcare. Whereas Instacart, DoorDash are focused on AI for customer personalization, enhancing delivery experience. But FedEx also mentioned having a solution out there for picture-proof delivery. So this is the type of output you can get. How do you actually get there? So what you actually do, all you need is a GPT Teams. I'd recommend a Teams account. You want to have a Teams account because then you can put some of the data security settings in there to make sure that the data that you input isn't used into training data. Once you've got a GPT console up, all you need to do is say something like, I want to analyze who's using AI in logistics based on earnings reports. And what GPT right now is doing is it's kind of giving me a select framework. And what I'm going to do is just upload a few of the earnings reports. So let's get a few of them in place. And you can actually just drop them in and do it that way. So here are a couple, GPT is giving me a framework on how to do the analysis, and then we can just upload the earnings reports in. Let's see. And it'll read the documents and basically give us those key like themes and trends. So it's actually going to give you a framework for what to do next. You see, I haven't even added a prompt. I've just uploaded documents, so it's already giving you a summary. So the next step, you can dive as deep and answer any questions that you like as a next step here. So you might ask questions like, can you compare these 2 companies and their earnings reports? Can you tell me who specifically talked about a use case of AI? And that's a way that you can not only get comfortable with using AI yourself and use GPT. Again, this is using GPT Teams. You can see this is ChatGPT version 4.0. But you can also get a lot of the industry insights very quickly. And before we finish the webinar, I know we're almost at time. One hack that I'll share with you guys that helps is you actually don't even need to download the reports to start with. I tried this a second time and I just said, hey, ChatGPT, can you provide me links to the most recent earning report transcripts for these delivery companies? And it's actually able to pull those online, and then you don't even need to go through the little bit of hassle to download the earnings reports. So you can do this yourself. We can share a video of how we do this, more specific detail, but that's how, that's how you get to the data and get to the analysis. It's also a bit of fun. seeing what you get back.
So it's also probably ironically going to give you the same, if not better, answers to some of your questions that you've asked today if you put them into GPT than what me and Charlotte have answered. So maybe try us out. Maybe see if you can beat us by
Yeah,
asking it.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. Go for it. Using, getting comfortable with AI is an extremely important step. And for anyone who's able to still hop on, stay on the call for a minute or two, we're seeing biggest blockers to AI adoption. Interestingly, lots of concerns about legal data security, and then also how to measure accuracy of AI. So I think looks like we'll be doing a follow-up webinar on specifically on ROI and how to measure accuracy in AI, as that's one of the key blockers you've all mentioned as a blocker to adoption. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining this morning. We hope that you got something out of the session that you can now tell your teams the difference between agents and assistants. And please drop us in the chat any additional questions you have. Otherwise, we have a feedback form you can share with us, and that'll help us tailor the content for next session.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks for the invite, Charlotte.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Nathan. Really excited about what you're building.
Yeah,
It's a fantastic use case.
Yeah, I'm guessing any of the questions that come in post this, happy to follow up as well. Direct them to the Captur team, and I'm sure we can get back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Great. Thanks for joining.